Maid's daughter was denied a luxury seat. Minutes later, the flight was stopped. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's incredible story. Imagine this. A luxurious private jet, the type reserved only for the wealthiest, is about to take off from an exclusive airport. On board, you'll find successful CEOs, powerful entrepreneurs, and celebrities. The air is thick with the smell of expensive cologne, polished leather seats, and the soft hum of the engines warming up. It's a private world, one where wealth and status dictate every interaction. Now, imagine a young girl, a maid's daughter, someone who has never belonged to this world. She has never been given the chance to sit in the plush seats reserved for the elite. She stands there, her small frame barely noticeable amidst the sea of high-end suits and designer bags. Her mother works tirelessly, cleaning the homes of the rich, but her daughter is rarely seen, just another invisible worker in a world of excess. Today, though, she was supposed to be on that flight. Her mother had managed to pull some strings, securing her a spot on the jet. A rare opportunity to experience a world far removed from the cramped apartment she calls home. But as she walked towards the luxury seat, the flight attendants, in their immaculate uniforms, immediately stopped her. "I'm sorry, miss," one of them said with a forced smile. "That seat is for someone else. You'll have to take a seat in the back." The words were cold, dismissive, and laced with an unspoken message. She didn't belong there. The girl's face flushed, her heart pounded. She had been looking forward to this moment, a chance to feel like someone important, even for just a few hours. But now, standing in the middle of the jet's aisle, she felt smaller than ever. She wasn't rich, she wasn't famous, and she certainly didn't deserve to be in a seat like that. As she moved to take a seat, in the back, she overheard whispers from the elite passengers around her. "Can you believe they let her on this flight?" one of them muttered. "I wouldn't want her sitting next to me," another one snickered. The girl's heart sank, but she tried to hide her tears. She didn't want to show weakness, not here, not in front of these people. She sat down in her designated seat, her hands trembling. As the flight took off, the luxurious world outside her window seemed so far away. Little did anyone know that the story was far from over. What happened next would leave everyone in shock, proving that sometimes, the person who is least expected to make a difference is the one who changes everything. Stay tuned to find out how the flight was stopped and what happened next. The plane hummed steadily, cutting through the air as it climbed higher into the sky. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the cabin as the passengers relaxed in their luxury seats, unaware of the tension that was building. The young girl, now seated at the back of the plane, tried to keep her composure. She stared out of the small window, watching the clouds below, but her mind was far from the view. Her heart ached with embarrassment and frustration. She had been so close to sitting in one of those luxurious seats, just for once, to feel like she was part of something special. But instead, she was cast aside, invisible, just like always. Her fingers nervously twitched as she clenched and unclenched her fists. She wasn't sure what hurt more, being rejected by the flight attendants or the cruel whispers she overheard. The flight attendants had been kind at first, but their dismissive gestures made her feel like a nobody. As the jet ascended, the rich, comfortable passengers appeared to have no idea what it felt like to be in her position. She had spent her entire life working in the shadows, invisible to the world. But something in her had snapped during those moments. As the sound of the engines faded, her mind raced, plotting what she could do next. Suddenly, a new thought crossed her mind. She had noticed something odd as she entered the plane. A briefcase, large, sleek, and out of place. It had been left unattended in one of the luxurious seats she had been initially denied. The briefcase was important. She knew it without understanding why. Her curiosity sparked, and the girl stood up, cautiously making her way toward the abandoned seat. The flight attendants were busy at the front of the plane, chatting quietly with the passengers. It was the perfect opportunity. She slipped past the aisles, her heart pounding. As she got closer, the briefcase glinted in the light. She could feel the weight of it, the power it might hold. She reached for it, her hands shaking. Then, she heard a voice. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" A man's voice, sharp and demanding, broke her concentration. She spun around to see one of the wealthy passengers staring at her, his expression filled with disdain. He was a tall man, dressed in a sharp suit, his eyes cold as he assessed her from head to toe. "You don't belong here," he said, his voice oozing with superiority. The girl froze, caught in his gaze. She wasn't sure what to say or do. She was just a maid's daughter. What right did she have to even touch that briefcase? But something inside her shifted. It was the same feeling she had felt when she was rejected earlier. She wasn't going to let him, or anyone else, make her feel small anymore. "This belongs to someone," she said, her voice steady. The man scoffed. "Who?" "You." He laughed, as if the idea of a poor, young girl touching anything of value was absurd. But the girl didn't flinch. "I know what this is," she said, more confidently now. The man's smile faded slightly. "You don't know anything," he muttered under his breath. But the girl had already turned her attention back to the briefcase. At that moment, something inside the case caught her eye. A document, half visible, its words etched in fine, elegant script. She couldn't read it clearly from where she stood, but she could tell it was important. And then it hit her. The truth was right there. She had stumbled upon something far more significant than she could have imagined. The girl took a deep breath. She knew she had to act fast. Without thinking twice, she grabbed the briefcase and turned to walk back toward her seat. The man lunged forward, but it was too late. The young girl was already out of his reach, and she had no idea what would happen next. The flight was about to take a turn none of them could have predicted. Minutes later, a voice came through the intercom, announcing a sudden, urgent stop in the flight's trajectory. The entire plane was forced to turn back. The girl's heart raced. What had she uncovered? And what was going to happen now? The intercom's sudden announcement echoed through the plane, startling everyone. "We have to return to the airport immediately. Please stay seated and remain calm." Panic swept through the cabin as the passengers exchanged worried glances. The once luxurious atmosphere now felt heavy, with the tension palpable in every corner. The young girl, clutching the briefcase tightly to her chest, sat frozen in her seat. What had she done? Her heart raced, and the buzzing in her ears drowned out the muffled voices around her. She could barely comprehend what was happening. As the plane made a sudden turn, heading back toward the airport, the girl felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She had only meant to prove something to herself, to show that she could be more than just a maid's daughter. But now, she had caused an entire flight to change course. What was in that briefcase? What had she uncovered? The man who had sneered at her earlier was now glaring at her from across the aisle, his eyes full of contempt and suspicion. He looked like he was about to say something, but before he could, the flight attendants came rushing down the aisle, looking frantic. "What happened? Why are we turning back?" one of the passengers demanded. The flight attendants exchanged nervous glances, but said nothing. The girl tightened her grip on the briefcase, instinctively shielding it from view. She could feel the weight of the document inside. It felt heavier now, as if it were filled with more than just paper. The man from earlier stood up, walking towards her, his movements quick and assertive. "Give it to me," he ordered in a low voice trembling but firm. "I don't know what's in it, but I'm not giving it to you." The man's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, with a snap of his fingers, he called for the flight attendants. "This girl is causing trouble," he said sharply. "She's not allowed to have that." The flight attendants hesitated, clearly unsure of what to do. They looked between the girl and the man, clearly caught in a tug of war they didn't know how to resolve. "Please, let me go," the girl said, standing up abruptly. "I don't know what's in here, but you can't make me give it to you." Just as she said that, the plane jolted, a sudden sharp turn causing everyone to lurch forward. The captain's voice came through the intercom again, but this time it was urgent. "We've received a serious threat. Please remain calm and stay seated until we land. Authorities will be waiting for us on the runway." The man's face went pale. The passengers around the girl began murmuring, their fear escalating with every word. The girl's heart sank. What had she done? She had no idea what was going on, but she now felt the full weight of the situation. As the plane approached the airport, the flight attendants rushed to prepare for landing. The girl sat back in her seat, clutching the briefcase with both hands, unsure of what would happen next. The atmosphere was thick with anxiety, and the fear in the cabin was palpable. She had no idea that the next few minutes would change her life forever. When the plane finally touched down, the authorities were already waiting for them. As the doors opened and the passengers began to disembark, the girl's eyes met the man's again. His expression was no longer one of arrogance, but of fear. It was clear that whatever was inside that briefcase was more than anyone had expected. As the plane came to a halt, the authorities stepped inside with swift, purposeful movements. A sense of urgency filled the cabin. The girl, still holding the briefcase tightly to her chest, could hear the faint rustling of papers and the low murmurs of anxious passengers. The atmosphere had shifted completely. The once quiet luxury of the jet had turned into a tense waiting room for what was about to unfold. The man, who had earlier demanded the briefcase, was no longer standing arrogantly. Instead, he was visibly sweating, his face pale with a mix of fear and confusion. The girl's heart pounded as she stood up slowly, the briefcase still clutched firmly in her hands. Her breath was shallow, and she felt like every step she took was being watched. As the authorities approached her, she felt a chill run down her spine. She had no idea what was inside the briefcase, but she knew that whatever it was had the power to change everything. The lead officer, a tall, imposing figure, approached her first. "What's in the briefcase?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. The girl hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to answer. She wasn't sure what to say or how much she should reveal. I don't know," she stammered. "I just found it." The officer's gaze hardened, as if he didn't believe her. "You found it?" he repeated, raising an eyebrow. "And you didn't think it was important enough to tell anyone?" The girl swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his accusation. She knew it wasn't the best time to tell the truth, but she had to. "I just saw it sitting there, and I thought, maybe it was important. But I didn't know what was inside." The officer nodded slowly, his eyes still locked on her. "We'll see about that," he said, motioning for his team to gather around. As the officers opened the briefcase, the passengers watched in stunned silence, their eyes wide with curiosity. The tension in the air was so thick, it felt like everyone was holding their breath. The girl's stomach twisted as the officers carefully unfolded the papers inside. What had she gotten herself into? As the papers were spread out, the lead officer's expression changed. His eyebrows furrowed as he scanned the document, then quickly passed it to another officer, who examined it with equal seriousness. The man who had mocked her earlier stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "This is a mistake," he snapped. "That's not supposed to be here." The officer didn't respond, but the look in his eyes was clear. Something serious was unfolding. The briefcase contained not just any document. It was a piece of evidence in a criminal case, a key detail that had been missing for weeks. The officers exchanged a few words before one of them turned to the girl. "You've just helped us uncover a major piece of evidence," the officer said, his tone softer now, but still serious. "This document ties several powerful people to an illegal operation that's been going on for years. What you've done is very important." The girl's mind raced as the words sank in. She hadn't meant to get involved in anything like this. She had only wanted to prove that she was more than just the maid's daughter, that she could make a difference. But now, she was standing at the center of something much larger than she could have ever imagined. The man who had mocked her was now standing still, his face drained of color. The girl could see the realization dawn on him. He was involved in this, and now, his world was about to come crashing down. The authorities continued to investigate the briefcase, pulling out more evidence, but the girl barely noticed. All she could think about was how her life had changed in the span of a few minutes. She had gone from being dismissed as invisible to playing a role in taking down a criminal operation. She wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. She had proved her worth, not by sitting in a luxurious seat, but by standing up when it mattered most. As the authorities continued their investigation, the atmosphere in the plane remained tense. The young girl, still sitting in her seat, felt the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. She had just uncovered a massive criminal operation, but the reality of it all was beginning to sink in. This wasn't just a chance encounter or a random act. She had just changed the course of her life forever. As the officers carefully examined the evidence from the briefcase, they began to speak in hushed tones, their voices low and serious. The girl couldn't hear all of their words, but she could tell by their expressions that they were in the middle of something significant. She felt a sense of both pride and fear, pride for what she had done, but fear of what would come next. The man who had mocked her earlier was still standing at the front of the plane, his face now ashen. He had tried to hide his involvement, but it was clear now that the authorities knew more than he had hoped. One of the officers approached him, his expression grim. "You're coming with us," the officer said. The man didn't protest. He just nodded, his eyes darting nervously between the officers and the girl. The girl couldn't believe what she was witnessing. The powerful, wealthy man who had looked down on her just hours before was now being escorted off the plane in handcuffs. Her stomach turned at the thought of how easily he had dismissed her, how easily he had underestimated her. She had proven him wrong, and now, the truth was out. The officers, after taking the man into custody, returned to the girl. They were calm now, no longer treating her like a suspect, but instead showing signs of gratitude. "You've done something very important today," one of them said, his tone softening. "You've helped expose a network of criminals who have been operating under the radar for years. This isn't just about one man. It's about taking down an entire operation." The girl nodded, still in shock. She had always known that her life was different from the wealthy people she had been surrounded by, but she had never imagined that her actions could make such an impact. She wasn't just a maid's daughter anymore. She had become a key player in something much bigger than herself. The flight attendants, who had been part of the situation earlier, now came over to her. They looked at her with a new sense of respect. "Thank you," one of them said quietly. "You've saved a lot of people today." For the first time since the flight began, the girl felt something she had never felt before: respect. She had been seen, not for where she came from or the work her mother did, but for what she had done in that moment. As the plane finally landed, she realized that her life would never be the same. She had been pushed into a world of power and danger, but in doing so, she had proven to herself that she was capable of more than she had ever believed. She was no longer invisible. She was someone who had made a difference. The authorities were quick to move the man and the evidence off the plane, but the girl stayed behind, watching as everything unfolded. She had no idea what would happen next, but she knew that her future had just begun. She had been part of something monumental, and now, she had the chance to build a new life for herself, one where she would no longer be defined by her circumstances. As the last of the passengers disembarked, the girl walked off the plane with her head held high, the weight of the briefcase now gone, replaced by the knowledge that she had made a real difference. As the days passed, the young girl's life began to change in ways she could never have imagined. The authorities had taken the man into custody, and his criminal network was quickly unraveling, revealing connections that reached farther than anyone had initially thought. The girl was no longer just the maid's daughter. She was now the key witness in a high-profile investigation. She found herself thrust into a new world, one filled with attention, uncertainty, and the weight of the truth she had uncovered. Her actions had set off a chain reaction that was shaking the very foundations of the people who had once looked down on her. She wasn't sure how to feel about all of it. On one hand, she was proud of what she had done. She had taken a stand when no one else would, and she had helped expose a massive operation that could have continued to destroy lives. But on the other hand, the consequences of her actions were now becoming clear. She was being watched, not just by the authorities, but by the media, who were eager to cover every detail of her involvement in the case. She couldn't go anywhere without people talking about her, staring at her, whispering her name. It was overwhelming. The girl had never craved attention. She just wanted to be seen for who she was, not just as the person who cleaned the wealthy's homes. But now, people were starting to recognize her. Even her classmates at school were talking about her. They were all fascinated by her sudden rise to prominence. For the first time in her life, she felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Despite the attention, one thing had become clear: her life was no longer the same. She had changed. The girl's family, especially her mother, were equally shocked by the turn of events. Her mother had always worked hard, keeping her head down and making sure her daughter stayed out of the spotlight. She had raised her to be humble, to work hard, and to stay out of the way of the powerful. But now, her daughter had become part of a story that was bigger than them both. The girl's mother had mixed emotions about the whole situation. She was proud of her daughter's bravery, but she also feared what the future might hold. She knew that their lives would never be the same, and she worried about the dangers that might come with all the attention. As the investigation continued, the girl found herself being asked to testify in court. She had no idea what to expect, but she knew that her testimony could bring down some of the most powerful figures in the country. It was a daunting task, but one she knew she had to face. She had proven to herself and to the world that she was more than just someone who cleaned other people's homes. She had made a difference, and now she had to follow through. The night before her testimony, she sat alone in her room, reflecting on everything that had happened. She had never imagined her life would take such a dramatic turn. She had always thought she would live a quiet life, working alongside her mother, doing the best she could to make ends meet. But now, she was part of something much larger than herself. She was part of a movement that was shaking the status quo, that was exposing the lies and corruption of those who thought they were untouchable. She was no longer invisible. As she lay in bed, she realized that no matter what happened next, she had already proven her worth. She had already shown the world that she was capable of so much more than they had ever given her credit for. And now, as she prepared to face the courtroom, she felt a new sense of strength and purpose. She was ready to take on whatever came next, no longer afraid to stand up for what was right. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and a palpable sense of anticipation filled the air. The young girl, now standing at the front of the room, was no longer just the maid's daughter. She was the key witness in a case that was shaking the very foundations of power. As she stepped up to the witness stand, she could feel every eye in the room on her. The weight of the moment was heavy, but she stood tall, her heart beating steadily in her chest. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind. She had gone from being invisible to becoming the center of a media storm. Her name was everywhere. But in this moment, none of that mattered. She had something more important to do. She had to tell the truth. The prosecutor, a well-dressed woman with a calm and steady voice, approached her with a friendly smile. "Can you please tell us what happened on the plane?" she asked, her voice clear and professional. The girl took a deep breath and began recounting the events, the words coming out in a steady flow. She spoke of the luxurious jet, the powerful man who had mocked her, and the moment she discovered the briefcase. The more she spoke, the more the weight of her words sank in. She was no longer just recounting a story. She was exposing a network of corruption that reached the highest levels of society. She could feel the eyes of the room upon her, but she didn't falter. She knew what she had to do. The defense attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit, stood up and attempted to discredit her. "Isn't it true," he began with a smirk, "that you only took the briefcase because you wanted attention?" The girl's stomach tightened, but she didn't back down. She had faced worse than this. "No," she said firmly. "I took the briefcase because it was the right thing to do." The defense attorney tried again. "And what exactly did you think you would find inside it? You had no idea what you were doing, did you?" The girl met his gaze, her voice unwavering. "I didn't know what was inside, but I knew it was important, and I wasn't going to let anyone else ignore it." The room went silent. The defense attorney hesitated, clearly caught off guard by her confidence. The prosecutor nodded in approval and turned to the jury. "This young girl has shown more courage than many of us could ever hope to have," she said. "Her actions have helped uncover a criminal operation that has been hiding in plain sight for years." As the girl left the witness stand, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. The hardest part was over, but she knew that the battle wasn't finished yet. The case was far from closed, and there would be more challenges ahead. However, for the first time in her life, she felt like she had the power to change things. She wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. She was someone who had stood up for what was right, someone who had made a difference. As she walked back to her seat, she could feel the weight of the room's respect. The whispers had stopped, and for the first time, she didn't feel invisible. She had proven to herself, and to the world, that she was more than her circumstances. She was someone who could take on the powerful, someone who could bring about real change. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she was excited to face it. She had a new sense of purpose, and no matter what happened next, she knew that she had already accomplished something incredible. The trial continued, and the young girl's testimony had sent ripples through the courtroom that would be felt for years to come. As the prosecution prepared their closing statements, the girl sat in the back, reflecting on everything that had happened since that fateful day on the plane. Her life had been completely transformed. What had started as a humiliating moment, being rejected for a luxury seat, had become the catalyst for exposing an entire criminal network. Now, she wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. She had become a symbol of courage, of standing up when others remained silent. The press had picked up on the story, and her face was all over the news. While she was grateful for the recognition, it felt strange to be in the spotlight. She had never wanted fame or attention. All she had ever wanted was to prove to herself that she could be more than her circumstances. And now, she had done that. But as the case drew to a close, she realized something more important. The journey had only just begun. Her life was still uncertain, and she wasn't sure what the future would hold. She had no idea how her newfound fame would impact her and her family. Would things go back to normal? Or would she always be seen as the girl who brought down a powerful criminal syndicate? She didn't know, but she did know one thing. She had made a difference. And that was something no one could take away from her. The final moments of the trial were tense. The jury had deliberated for hours, and now, they were ready to announce their verdict. As the judge called the room to attention, the girl felt her heart race. She didn't know what to expect. She had witnessed the lies and deceit of the defense, but she still couldn't help but wonder if the truth would be enough to bring justice. The room was silent as the jury foreman stood up. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all charges," he declared. The words echoed through the courtroom. A wave of relief washed over the girl. The man who had once dismissed her as nothing more than a servant, a nobody, had been held accountable for his actions. The powerful criminal operation that had been hidden for so long was now exposed, and the girl had played a crucial role in making it happen. As the courtroom erupted into applause, the girl felt a mix of emotions. She was proud of what she had achieved, but she also felt the weight of everything that had changed. She had lost her innocence in some ways, but she had gained something much more valuable, her voice. The moment she had been waiting for had arrived. The man who had caused so much pain, the man who had tried to humiliate her, was finally facing the consequences of his actions. And for the first time, she felt like she had truly won. As the trial ended and the courtroom began to clear, the girl walked out into the hallway with her head held high. The future was still uncertain, but she knew that she was no longer invisible. She had proven to herself, and to the world, that she had a place in this world. No longer defined by her circumstances, she was now someone who could make a difference. And that was the most powerful thing of all. Months passed, and life slowly began to settle down for the young girl, but things would never be the same. Her name was now known, not just in her community, but across the country. The once quiet girl, who had always felt invisible, was now at the center of a national conversation about courage, justice, and standing up to corruption. It was surreal to her, and at times, it felt like a dream. But when she looked back at how it all started, she knew one thing for sure. She had found her voice. She had never intended to become a hero. She was just a girl who was tired of being overlooked, tired of being dismissed as nothing more than the help. Yet, in one brave moment, she had sparked a chain of events that had exposed an entire network of powerful criminals. Her actions had made a difference. It had been a long road to get to this point, and it wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, fear, and uncertainty, especially when she had to testify in court. But with each step, she had grown stronger. And now, she had become a beacon of hope for others who felt powerless, for those who were often ignored. Her story was being shared across the country, inspiring countless people who had been in similar situations, people who felt like they didn't matter. But the girl had proven that they did. She had proven that no matter where you came from, no matter how small or overlooked you felt, you could make a difference. As the months went by, her life started to take new directions. She received scholarship offers, media requests, and invitations to speak at events. But more than anything, she had gained something far more valuable: confidence in herself. She knew that her future was in her hands now. She had the power to shape it, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. Her relationship with her mother had also changed. They had always been close, but now, there was a newfound sense of pride and respect between them. Her mother, who had always worked hard to make sure her daughter had everything she needed, was incredibly proud of her. The girl had broken free from the life that had been expected of her and had set herself on a path to something bigger. One evening, As they sat together, her mother turned to her with a soft smile. "You've done something extraordinary," her mother said, her voice filled with emotion. "I never imagined you would change the world like this." The girl smiled, her eyes shining with determination. "I didn't change the world, Mom," she replied. "I just did what was right." And that was the truth. She hadn't been looking for fame or recognition. She hadn't been trying to change the world. All she had done was take a stand, and that had been enough. The girl realized that her journey wasn't just about the case or the media attention. It was about finding the strength to be herself, to be seen and heard for who she truly was. It was about showing the world that even the smallest voice could bring about change. She wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. She was a young woman who had proven that she had the power to shape her own future. And as she looked toward the future, she knew that the possibilities were endless. She had overcome so much, and now, she was ready for whatever came next. The road ahead was unknown, but for the first time in her life, she was excited to walk it with her head held high, knowing that she had made a real difference in the world. In this captivating story of resilience and courage, we delve into a young girl's life who defied the odds and changed her destiny, proving that even those who are often overlooked can make a significant impact. This journey, filled with twists and challenges, is one of the most powerful millionaire stories you'll ever hear. From working as a maid's daughter to finding herself at the center of a high-profile criminal case, she rises above societal expectations and exposes a criminal network that had eluded authorities for years. As she faces immense pressure, the young girl becomes a symbol of bravery and hope for those who feel invisible. Millionaire stories often showcase wealth and power, but this one highlights the untold strength of someone from humble beginnings. This is not just another story of wealth. It is a tale of integrity, determination, and the courage to stand up when it matters most. Through her testimony, she helps bring down the powerful figures who had once looked down on her, proving that even the smallest voice can have the greatest impact. Her rise from an unknown figure to a heroine is one of the most inspiring millionaire stories out there. In a world where the rich and powerful often get away with their wrongdoings, this story stands as a beacon of justice. The young girl's actions turn the tides, not only for herself, but for the lives of others who had been affected by the same corrupt system. As her story spreads, it inspires countless others to take a stand against injustice, reminding us all that even in the face of adversity, one person can make a difference. Millionaire stories often come with a fair share of luxuries and fame, but the true value lies in the lessons we learn and the strength we discover within ourselves. This story is a powerful reminder that courage doesn't come from status, it comes from the heart. With every step she takes, she shatters the illusion that only the wealthy have the power to make a change. This is a story for anyone who has ever felt invisible, and it will resonate with you long after you've heard it. This is one of the most remarkable millionaire stories that prove the true power lies within ordinary people doing extraordinary things.